The accusation came out of nowhere. My wife raised my phone in front of my face like it was evidence in a courtroom. "Who is this?" she demanded. "Are you cheating on me?" The message on the screen was short. "Hey, are you free tonight?" No name. Just a number. I didn't answer. Not because I had something to hide, but because I already knew exactly how this moment would end. My name is Brandon Scott, and after 15 years of marriage, I had learned something important about accusations. Sometimes the truth reveals itself faster when you don't interrupt it. Laura took my silence as confirmation. Of course she did. Her jaw tightened, and she shook the phone slightly in front of me. "So that's it," she said bitterly. "You're not even going to deny it." The living room was quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall. Our daughter's backpack sat by the front door where she had dropped it after school earlier that afternoon. Everything about the house felt normal. Except the tension between us. Laura's thumb moved quickly across the screen. "If you won't explain," she said, "then I will." She pressed call. I stayed seated at the kitchen table, calm. Waiting. The phone rang once. Twice. On the third ring, someone answered. "Hello?" Laura's expression froze. Because the voice was unmistakable. "Our daughter." "Dad?" she said through the phone. "Why are you calling me from Mom's phone?" Laura's hand slowly lowered. But our daughter wasn't finished yet. Her next sentence shattered the accusation completely. "Also, why is Mom checking your phone again?" The silence in the living room turned heavy. Laura slowly lowered the phone from her ear while our daughter's voice was still coming through the speaker. "Hello? Dad? Mom?" the girl asked. "What's going on?" Laura ended the call quickly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Her eyes moved from the phone to me, then back to the screen like it had suddenly betrayed her. "You gave her your number?" she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. It wasn't defensive. It was simple. Our daughter, Lily, had gotten her first phone 2 weeks ago. She had asked for my number so she could text me if she needed a ride after school. I gave it to her. Apparently, Laura hadn't known. The message Laura saw earlier suddenly made perfect sense. "Hey, are you free tonight?" Lily had texted me about her school play rehearsal. But Laura had already built a completely different story in her head. "I thought," she started, then stopped. "You thought I was cheating," I finished calmly. She didn't deny it. Laura rubbed her forehead like the room had suddenly gotten warmer. "I didn't recognize the number," she said. "That happens." "But you didn't say anything," she added. I leaned back slightly in my chair. "I wanted you to hear it yourself." That answer didn't comfort her. If anything, it made her more uneasy. Because this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Laura looked at me carefully now. Almost suspiciously. "Why does Lily say I check your phone again?" she asked slowly. I met her eyes. Because that question revealed something much bigger than the text message. Laura didn't like the silence that followed. "You're not answering me," she said. "I am," I replied. "Just not with excuses." Her expression tightened. "For the last 6 months," I continued calmly, "you've checked my phone 5 times. That's not true." "It is." She crossed her arms immediately. "And you've been keeping count?" "Yes." The room went quiet again. Because the truth doesn't need volume. It just needs accuracy. Laura looked away toward the window, clearly uncomfortable now. "I was just making sure," she said. "Making sure of what?" "That nothing was going on." I nodded slowly. "And every time you checked," I said, "you found nothing." "That doesn't mean." "It means exactly what it means." She stopped talking. I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, picking up my coffee mug. The argument wasn't explosive. It was something else. Controlled. Because when people expect anger and instead get calm clarity, it makes them nervous. "You could have just told me the number was Lily's," Laura said quietly. "I could have," I agreed. "But then you would have believed your suspicion was justified." She looked back at me. "And it wasn't." "No," I said evenly. I took another sip of coffee. "But what concerns me isn't the text message." Her eyebrows pulled together. "Then what?" I set the mug down on the counter. "The fact that you were so certain there had to be someone else." Laura didn't respond. And that silence raised a question I hadn't wanted to ask before. Because when accusations appear out of nowhere, sometimes they come from guilt. Laura stared at me like she couldn't decide whether to be angry or defensive. "Guilt?" she repeated. "Are you seriously suggesting that I'm the one doing something wrong?" I'm suggesting, I said calmly, that people usually accuse others of the things they're worried about themselves. Her jaw tightened immediately. That's ridiculous. Maybe. Maybe not. The living room felt colder now, even though the sunlight hadn't changed. Laura walked toward the kitchen slowly. You're turning this around on me because you got caught, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Caught doing what? She didn't answer. Because there wasn't anything to point at anymore. The evidence she thought she had just turned into a conversation with our daughter. Instead, she leaned against the counter. You've been distant lately, she said. That was new. Distant? Yes. I nodded slowly. That tends to happen when someone checks your phone behind your back. Laura looked down for a moment. Then she said something I hadn't expected. Maybe if you were more transparent, I wouldn't have to. The statement hung in the air. Transparent. Interesting choice of word. I stepped closer to the counter. Laura, I said quietly, if you wanted transparency, you could have asked. She looked back at me quickly. And you would have told me everything? Yes. She studied my face carefully. Then she asked a question that made the situation suddenly more complicated. Then can I see your messages now? I didn't hesitate. I picked up my phone, unlocked it, and slid it across the counter toward her. Go ahead. But when she looked at the screen, her expression suddenly changed. Because a new message had just appeared. From a number neither of us recognized. Laura stared at the screen. The new message sat at the top of the conversation list. Unknown number. We need to talk. Tonight. She slowly looked up at me. You said there was nothing. There isn't, I replied calmly. Then who is that? I have no idea. For a moment she just stood there, holding the phone like it might reveal more answers if she looked at it long enough. Then she tapped the message. Another text appeared immediately. You can't keep ignoring this. It's about your wife. The room went completely still. Laura's eyes lifted to mine again. This is a joke, she said quickly. It might be. But the message had already shifted the atmosphere. Call it, she said suddenly. What? Call the number. I watched her carefully. 10 minutes ago she was convinced I was cheating. Now she wanted proof. Fine. I reached over, took the phone, and pressed call. The line rang once. Twice. Then someone answered. A man's voice. Low. Calm. Brandon Scott, he said. Not a question. A statement. Laura's head snapped toward me. I didn't speak yet. Because the man on the other end continued. I was wondering how long it would take you to see the message. My grip on the phone tightened slightly. And who exactly are you? I asked. There was a short pause. Then he replied with a sentence that made Laura's face drain of color. I'm the man who knows what your wife has been doing for the past 3 months. Laura grabbed the edge of the counter. What is he talking about? She whispered. I didn't answer yet. Because the man on the phone continued speaking. Don't hang up, he said calmly. You deserve to know the truth. Laura shook her head quickly. This is some kind of scam, she said. People do this all the time. Maybe. But the man didn't sound nervous. Scammers push. This voice didn't. What truth? I asked. There was a pause. Then he spoke again. Your wife has been meeting someone every Thursday afternoon. Laura's reaction was instant. That's a lie. Her voice echoed through the kitchen. I stayed calm. Who is this? I asked again. Someone who works in the same building as your wife. My eyes moved slowly toward Laura. Her breathing had changed. That's ridiculous, she said quickly. I work in an office with hundreds of people. The man didn't argue. That's true, he said. Then he added something much more specific. But only one of them parks next to you in the lower garage. Laura froze. Because that detail was real. She had told me about the lower garage many times. Brandon, she said quickly, don't listen to this. I kept the phone to my ear. What exactly are you claiming? I asked. The man didn't hesitate. That your wife hasn't been suspicious of you. He paused. She's been afraid you'd discover her. Laura's voice rose immediately. This is insane. But the man spoke one more sentence before the line went quiet. If you want proof, check the photos I just sent. At the same moment, my phone vibrated. My phone vibrated again. A photo message. Laura stepped closer instantly. Don't open that, she said quickly. That alone told me something. I tapped the screen anyway. The image loaded slowly. At first, it just looked like a parking garage. Concrete pillars. Dim lighting. Then I saw the car. Laura's car. Parked in her usual spot. And standing beside it, Laura. But she wasn't alone. A man stood next to her, close enough that their shoulders were touching. They weren't arguing. They weren't discussing work. They were holding hands. Laura covered her mouth. "That's not what it looks like," she said immediately. The line was quiet on the other end of the phone, but the man was still there. Listening. Watching this unfold exactly the way he expected. I swiped to the next photo. Different day. Same garage. Same man. Laura turned away. "Nathan," she started. "Brandon," I corrected calmly. Her voice cracked slightly. "Brandon? I can explain." Maybe she could. But explanations usually arrive before evidence. Not after. "Who is he?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. The man on the phone finally spoke again. "His name is Daniel Ortiz," he said. "Your wife's regional supervisor." Laura closed her eyes. That silence was louder than any confession. I looked at the photos again. 3 months. Every Thursday. The strange accusations. The phone checking. The suspicion. And suddenly the entire pattern made sense. Because when someone feels guilty, they start looking for guilt everywhere else. For a long moment, no one spoke. The photos were still on my screen. Concrete garage. Laura. Daniel Ortiz. 3 different Thursdays. 3 different pictures. Laura slowly lowered herself into the chair at the kitchen table like her legs had stopped cooperating. "Brandon, please," she said quietly. "Just let me explain." I ended the call. The anonymous man had already said everything he needed to say. The room was silent except for Laura's uneven breathing. "You accused me of cheating," I said calmly. She didn't look up. "I know." "You checked my phone." "I know." "You called our daughter thinking she was another woman." Her voice broke slightly. "I know." The strange thing was, I didn't feel angry. Just clear. Because the last 15 minutes had answered every question I didn't realize I had been asking. The distance. The suspicion. The sudden accusations. They were never about me. They were about what she was hiding. Laura finally looked up. "It wasn't supposed to become serious," she said. "It was just." I raised a hand gently. "You don't need to explain it." That surprised her. "You're not mad?" she asked. I picked up my phone and looked at the photos one last time. "No," I said quietly. Then I locked the screen. "Because when someone destroys their own marriage," I continued, "anger doesn't fix it." I stood up and walked toward the hallway. Laura's voice followed me. "Where are you going?" I paused at the door. "To call a lawyer." Because sometimes the truth doesn't explode a marriage. It simply reveals it.